everybody, and welcome back to another Keeping It Real with Dr. Anita podcast. I am your host, Dr. Anita Polite-Wilson, C-Suite Trusted Advisor, Board Director, and Diversity, Inclusion, and Belonging Strategy Consultant, helping members of the C-Suite and their teams reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. We are back with our December Christmas series of real conversations from the C-Suite with my guest, Ms. Scharrell Jackson and Dr. Catrena Elliott. And ladies, you know that this is my holiday series, and thank you so much for being so festive. Again, you look like a Christmas present, and you just look like, I don't know, it's better than a candy cane, but that's all that comes to mind because of the red and white. What were you thinking of when you put that? It's absolutely gorgeous. What were you thinking of? Let's just go with the Christmas colors.
Just bring some jewels and pearls to the table.
Mm-hmm. Brings and jewels. All right, it's beautiful. So speaking of the table, we're going to talk about the practice of the table, and the community already knows that throughout the year I talk about 3 practices that I discovered in my research: the practice of the table, the practice of the commons, and the practice of the hearth. So we're going to start off with the table first. In our next conversation, we'll combine the practice of the commons and the hearth. But I first want to ask you both, what are your favorite holiday traditions around the table?
I'm going to let you go.
It's really having conversations of the experiences. So I love asking my mom, and when my grandmother was living, like, what's your favorite memory from Christmas?
Mm-hmm.
Or what's your favorite memory from Thanksgiving? Mm-hmm. And that always leads into, when I was a kid, you know, all those amazing conversations. And now, with some of the elders who have passed away, we always now talk about, in my family, we've always had the sweet potato pie cook-off.
Yes.
And
a cook-off.
A cook-off.
Okay.
So my auntie, we always talk about who won, and it's always a debate. So those are always fond memories that is passing down generation over generation in my family.
Thank you for sharing that. A sweet potato pie cook-off.
Sweet potato pie cook-off.
Next time you have that,
say invite you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Scharrell, what's your tradition?
I have to say that the dynamics of my family has changed over the few years. My mom is the eldest of 11, eldest girl of 11, and over the years when my grandmother was alive, we would always get together as a very, very, very large family. There's over 100 cousins and just a ton of people, and my grandmother's. But since my grandmother has passed, the dynamics has changed, and that's actually been somewhat disheartening, and we've really become more individualistic in terms of our own personal families. But within my own personal family, I think there's one of the things that I love to do. I birthed 3 kings. I recently had the pleasure of bringing a queen into my life as a daughter, but I buy my sons pajamas every year. And they're adults now and was married and all that, and I know they probably think it's crazy. But traditionally, I enjoy doing things like that. Traditionally, I enjoy a family trip, going to the mountains, and really trying to establish our own tradition. But most importantly, being able to sit together and talk about what we're grateful for.
Yes.
Traditionally, is much more important to me than food. It's really more about the time. And it's interesting as my children have gotten older, because I have sons and they go to the girls' houses and sing things of that nature. So it's really finding my own spot, my own lane, and creating a tradition with my children and my grandchildren, and creating a legacy that they can remember versus honing in on my own personal past.
I noticed when you said going around the table and talking about what you're thankful for, we both said, because we get that. That's my mom's tradition. Okay, go around the table and talk about what you're thankful for. And I found it interesting that in an opinion piece I read just before Thanksgiving, it was written by Joanne Stunell Lester, an award-winning author of 6 books, and most recently, Loving Before Loving, A Marriage in Black and White. And the opinion piece starts like this. My wife and I were recently invited to Thanksgiving dinner at the home of a friend. At the bottom of the invitation, printed in bold letters, were the words, "No politics discussed." A little further down in her opinion piece, she writes, I found myself wishing that the no politics rule applied more often in our daily discourse at this moment of fierce strife and rancor. Nearly everyone is confronted by intensely emotional conflicts with the upheaval roiling workplaces, college campuses, schools, and other places. And toward the end of the piece, she writes this: if the topic of politics does bubble up as close to the surface as it is for all of us, I hope we listen to each other in a spirit of empathy. At this terribly difficult time, empathy is a balm that may ease our collective anguish. So, ladies, given the sentiments expressed in this opinion piece and remembering the family traditions around the table that we've just shared, let's explore this question together. How do you apply the similar practice of whatever your family tradition is around the table in the workplace to cultivate belonging?
I think for me, to cultivate belonging, it's not so much about what's not invited to the table, but how can I support you? I think that if we had more intimate relationships with individuals, personally, professionally, in our community, in our homes, where our intention was about how we can further support one another, then people would feel like they matter. I think oftentimes we spend so much time trying to avoid conversations so that we don't have discord versus bringing conversations into the table where we can create community. And so for me, it's always, what can I do to support you? And I think that that would be amazing if we can make that part of our overall culture everywhere we go, including the workplace.
In my work, I talk a lot about the fact that I don't lead with race relations, I lead with real relationships. And when you talked about just seeing people, I think about a show that I had earlier this year where we were talking about rose-colored glasses, where we don't want to bring the conversations to the table that might be a little uncomfortable. But over time, as we condition ourselves to be brave enough to lean into the discomfort and become comfortable doing that, because as the discomfort, we feel it, it raises our awareness about something that we need to look at and have a conversation about, right? So, Dr. Catrena, what's the tradition that you say, you know what, we need to bring this into the workplace to do exactly what Ms. Scharrell just said?
Absolutely. You know, I look at it, the relationship before the work. So, and really looking into the iceberg and learning one another below the iceberg. So, to me, that increases that grace and space for one another. So you can really bond and get to know one another. And when trying times come up, we have a relationship. I know you for who you are. I see you. Right. So I think the more and more organizations can do that, focus on the relationship before the work, because if I have a strong relationship with you and I know you and I know a little bit about your family and your childhood and some of the scars that we all have on our back, then guess what? I'm going to be more accommodating. I may even communicate with you a little different because now I even know your communication style and maybe some of your triggers. So having those real conversations at the table increases organizational effectiveness.
When you said the relationship before work, it reminds me of a practice that I recently discovered and now I share it with everybody. It's called a one breath check-in. And whether you're in person or especially virtually, just go around the room and ask folks, okay, in one breath, how you showing up and what do you need from the team? I'm showing up a little apprehensive and what I could use from the team is just a little patience. I'm showing up concerned about a family member and what I could use from the team is grace if I have to, go and take a call. Or, you know what, I'm really excited about the holidays. I just want the team to show up excited with me, right? But it gives everybody an opportunity to share something so that if Ms. Scharrell seems a little distant, I know that she's not being rude. It's not that she's not paying attention to me. She's got something on her mind, and I need to send some thoughts and prayers her way, right? Or if Dr. Catrena is all excited about going out of town, don't hate, be excited for her, right? And so back to your point about the relationship before work, it doesn't take but a few seconds. A one breath check-in is just that. How you showing up and what do you need from the team? It invites people to be transparent. It invites people to be authentic. It invites people to have a sense of belonging. And oftentimes I think we forget that belonging is a two-way street. It's not so much about, well, what organization, what are you doing to make me feel like I belong? But how are we meeting the organization and feeling that we belong, which goes back to feeling safe, not having the need to code switch, and all of the other things that we talked about in our first episode.
Absolutely.
Can I add something to that?
Yes, please.
I think also, I'm sure in your work that you're doing, and you and myself as well, oftentimes we also have to remember that generationally we entree into the workspace with different needs.
Yes.
And so when you're thinking about boomers and X, that boomers entreing in for survival, Xers entreing into the workplace to create a life for themselves, and now you dovetail down to Gen Z who wants to have a job around the life they want to live. The approach at even why we're in the workplace is different. And I find with many of my clients, the idea around, well, why do I have to do that as a CEO? Why do I have to have a one-on-one? Why do I have to have this one breath moment? Like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
The idea that you have to shift your leadership style in and of itself is baffling to
Yes.
many. And so I think that when we even think about things like these recommendations that we're making, we need to also consider that this belonging, diversity, inclusion, one breath moments, having one-on-ones with our team members, operating with empathy, there needs to be leadership coaching across the board.
Absolutely.
Amen.
And oftentimes we're only coaching our level below the C-suite, which is why I admire the work that you're doing with the C-suite.
Thank you.
Because we all need to learn and shift if we're going to meet people in a space of belonging.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. And that is a conversation worth having around the table with all leaders, right?
Yes.
So community, wow, it just gets better and better and better. I'm just so excited right now. Please, if you want to hear this conversation again, you know where to go, dranita.com. At the top in the center of the landing page, click the link that says Keeping It Real Podcast. And while you're there, check out my services and my resources. In the meantime, please get in the flow with me, follow, like, and overshare any conversation that helps you reframe diversity conversations from difficult to different. Until next time, this is Dr. Anita reminding you to stay blessed and keep it real.